My girlfriend said you need to impress my friends, then handed me a $1,000 dinner bill. I smiled and said no problem. She was mortified when the waiter returned and announced to the table she thought she was being clever, setting me up to fail in front of her perfectly dressed, perfectly shallow group of friends. The kind who judged your worth by the watch on your wrist and the shoes on your feet. Dinner was her idea. A meet and impress test. But what she really wanted was control. She wanted to see if I would bend, if I would grovel, if I would empty my wallet just to win approval from people who barely made eye contact with the waiter. And when that final bill landed in front of me, $1,000 without warning, she slid it across the table with a smile like she had just checkmated me in public. But I didn't flinch, didn't panic, didn't reach for my card like a desperate man trying to prove he belonged. I just smiled, sat back, and waited. Because what she didn't know was that I had already planned something. Something that would turn her little power play into the most humiliating dinner of her life. And when the waiter came back, she finally realized the game wasn't mine to lose. It was hers. Dinner started out like one of those influencer reels she was always watching. Champagne glasses clinking, fake laughter bouncing off white walls, and everyone dressed like they were auditioning for some reality show I didn't sign up for. It was her idea of a perfect night. Big table, loud people, overpriced appetizers, and an audience. She gave me no heads up, no warning. Just told me on the way there. You need to impress them. They're important to me. So don't embarrass me, okay? I didn't argue. Didn't ask questions. I just nodded and went along, even though something inside me already knew this wasn't about meeting her friends. It was about her testing me. From the moment we sat down, I knew the vibe was off. They barely said hello, only asked surface questions like what do you drive and what do you do, but never really listened. I could feel her eyes on me all night, waiting for me to mess up a sentence or reach for the wrong fork. And she played it cool, like a queen bee watching her newest pet struggle to impress the hive. Then came the food. They ordered the most expensive things on the menu. Multiple bottles, extra starters, even desserts no one touched. And the bill, that massive leather folder, landed right in front of me like a trap already sprung. She smiled, tapped it toward me, and said in front of everyone, "You got this right, babe." I looked at the total. $1,000. For a dinner I didn't ask for. With people I'd never choose to eat with. And a girlfriend who clearly thought money meant more than respect. The whole table watched. Like they expected me to fumble, to sweat, to ask if we could split it. But I didn't. I just smiled, looked at her, and said, "No problem." Because I had already decided. If she was going to treat me like an ATM, she was about to get the most expensive lesson of her life. The waiter came back to collect the check, and I leaned in calm cool like I wasn't about to flip the entire tone of the evening with one sentence. I handed him the black folder and said with a straight face, "It'll be 6 separate checks, please. One for each of them, and I'll pay for mine." He nodded politely like it wasn't the first time he'd seen a dinner table implode. Then he walked off to break the news. My girlfriend froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. The smirk she'd been wearing all night slowly melted into panic. "What do you mean separate checks?" she whispered through clenched teeth. I smiled, leaned in, and said, "Well, since this was your idea and your friends ordered like it was their last meal on Earth, I figured we should all be responsible adults. You said I needed to impress them, not fund their lifestyle." She didn't respond at first. Just sat there staring at me like I had betrayed her on live television. One of her friends tried to laugh it off. Another cleared his throat and said, I didn't bring enough cash for this." And the girl across from me, the one who ordered lobster and $100 bottle of wine, looked like she had seen a ghost. The waiter returned holding the itemized bills. One by one he laid them down like evidence at a trial. Her friends looked at each other, some pretending to check their wallets, others whispering about Venmo and credit limits. My girlfriend went pale. "This isn't funny," she hissed. "You're making me look bad." I stayed calm. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't make a scene. I just said, "No, I'm making you look exactly like what you are. Someone who wanted to impress her friends by throwing me under the bus." She didn't say another word, because the truth was loud enough. Her plan had backfired. The power play was over. And now she was sitting in the middle of a table full of uncomfortable stares and unpaid bills. I finished my meal slowly, tipped the waiter generously, stood up and said, "Good luck, everyone," and walked out feeling lighter than I had in weeks. She wanted me to impress her friends. Well, mission accomplished. Just not the way she expected. The fallout started before I even got to my car. My phone buzzed non-stop. Texts from her friends. All a mix of what the hell just happened and how could you do that to her in front of everyone. But I didn't respond. Because I wasn't going to defend myself for not paying $1,000 to prove my worth to strangers. She called me that night. 6 times. When I finally picked up, she was crying. "You humiliated me," she said. "You made me look like a fool in front of everyone." I stayed silent for a second, then said, "No. You did that to yourself." I just stopped playing along. She tried to spin it. Said she was just joking. That she thought I would go along with it because that's what couples do. They have each other's backs. And I told her, yeah, they do. But only when it's mutual. Only when respect comes both ways. Not when one person sets the other up to be embarrassed. You think money equals love. That just because I smiled through your tests you could keep pushing and I'd never push back. She started crying harder. Said she didn't know I'd take it so seriously. Said it was just one dinner. But it wasn't just one dinner. It was every time she made me feel small to look big in front of others. Every time she treated me like an accessory, not a partner. Every time she turned real connection into some performance for people who didn't care about us. I told her I needed space. That I wasn't sure if this was something I could come back from. And she panicked. She begged. Said she'd talk to her friends. Said we could fix it. But I didn't want to fix something built on ego and disrespect. I wanted peace. And for the first time in a long time, I had it. I ended the call. Turned off my phone. And slept like a man who finally remembered his own worth. Because love shouldn't feel like a test you're always about to fail. And if it does, maybe it's time to stop trying to pass and start walking away. The next few days were filled with silence on my end and noise on hers. She messaged mutual friends. Tried to make it seem like I overreacted. Like I had ruined a perfectly good night over a small misunderstanding. But people weren't buying it. Even her closest friends started to distance themselves. One of them messaged me privately and said, "Honestly, that was wild. She made you look like her credit card, not her boyfriend." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about dinner. It was about patterns. About how she needed to impress everyone but never thought about what it cost the people closest to her. I didn't block her. Didn't delete photos. I just moved on. Quietly. I started focusing on things that filled me up instead of drained me. Went back to the gym. Caught up with old friends. Picked up a side project I had shelved for months. And with every passing day, I felt lighter. Like I had stepped out of a relationship that was slowly dimming my own light just to make hers shine brighter. She texted me again a week later. "I miss you." Just 3 words. But they didn't hit the same. Because now I saw through them. She didn't miss me. She missed what I gave her. Stability. Support. A stage to stand on while she played confident in front of others. I didn't reply. Because closure doesn't come from going back. It comes from standing still long enough to realize you're finally free. And the truth is, she didn't want a boyfriend. She wanted an audience. Someone to clap while she performed a version of herself that even she didn't fully believe in. But I wasn't in the crowd anymore. I had left the show. And I didn't need an encore. Months passed and life kept moving. I found calm in the quiet. Started dating again, slowly this time, carefully this time. With someone who laughed without trying too hard. Who asked about my day and actually listened. Someone who didn't treat love like a scoreboard. One night while scrolling through social media, I saw a post from my ex. A selfie with a long caption about growth and lessons and becoming your best self. But I could tell it was for show. Every word sounded like it was written for people to believe she had changed. When deep down she was still the same person who handed someone a $1,000 bill and called it a test. A week later I ran into her at a friend's birthday. She was polite. Overly polite. Tried to act like we were old friends. But her eyes kept darting. Checking if I was alone. I wasn't. The woman next to me smiled, held my hand, and introduced herself with warmth and confidence. There was no performance. No competition. Just real presence. My ex tried to make small talk. How have you been? You look good. Glad to see you're doing well. I smiled and said, Then I turned back to my new chapter. Because that dinner, that night, that $1,000 bill, wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of me realizing I deserved more. More respect. More care. More honesty. And sometimes, it takes being handed a ridiculous bill in front of strangers to finally stop paying the emotional price behind closed doors. So when people ask me about that night, I just laugh and say, she wanted me to impress her friends. Instead, I impressed myself by walking away without looking back. Perfect. The ending will be approximately 743 words long. Here's the final extended ending for your story. It had been months since that dinner, the night everything shifted. And not just the relationship, but me. The way I saw myself. What I tolerated. What I was willing to accept in the name of love. That night didn't just expose her. It revealed me to myself. A version of me that had been slowly shrinking to fit inside someone else's expectations. A version that kept quiet so she could be loud. That paid the bill so she could show off. That smiled while feeling small. But that version didn't exist anymore. I had stopped chasing her approval. Stopped measuring my worth by how impressed her friends were. Stopped trying to be enough for someone who never really saw me at all. The silence after our last message was louder than any breakup speech. She didn't try again. Not directly. Just posted vague quotes about growth and lessons learned. Things like, sometimes you lose a good one while chasing attention. And if he can't handle you at your worst, he doesn't deserve you at your best. But even her captions felt tired. Because the people watching didn't know the full story. Didn't see the way she slid the bill across the table that night like she was making a point. Didn't hear her say, "You got this right, babe." Like I was just a wallet with arms. I had nothing to prove anymore. I was done with performative love. The kind where everything is about how things look instead of how things feel. Done with being tested. With being the fallback plan. With being the guy who shows up just so someone else can shine brighter. I built something better after her. Not flashy. Not dramatic. Just honest. Simple. Peaceful. I learned how to be alone without being lonely. Reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. Started taking small weekend trips for myself. Things she always said were boring unless they involved rooftop bars or influencers. I realized how much of myself I had put on pause in that relationship. Waiting for her to choose me fully. To finally meet me halfway. But she never did. Because she didn't want a partner. She wanted a stage. And I was supposed to clap on cue. One day I got a message from someone I didn't expect. Her brother. He had always been nice to me. Even warned me once. Just be careful. She likes things her way. Always has. His message said, "I heard what happened. Honestly. Good on you for walking away. You deserved way more than what she gave." It was simple. But it landed deep. Because even people close to her could see it. Even they knew the difference between love and manipulation. The last time I ever saw her was at a wedding. Not ours. A mutual friend's. She was sitting at a table with two of her friends. On her phone. Scrolling. Not really present. I walked past with a woman I was seeing then. Someone who didn't expect me to prove my worth with money. Someone who thought kindness was impressive enough. My ex looked up. Our eyes met. And for a second, just a flicker, I saw it. That flash of regret. That second where she remembered how she used to have all of my attention. How she used to be the one I dressed up for. Planned dinners for. Smiled through discomfort for. Now she was just someone I used to know. And I was someone who had finally stopped apologizing for having boundaries. She looked away first. Back to her phone. Back to the version of herself she still wanted the world to see. And me. I walked on. Not out of spite. Not out of pride. But because I didn't need anything from her anymore. Not closure. Not conversation. Not validation. The lesson was already learned. The test had already been passed. She handed me a bill that night. But I never paid with money. I paid with patience. With compromise. With years of trying to be seen. And when I finally stood up and said no more, she wasn't angry because I left. She was angry because I finally realized I could. And once I did, there was no going back. Because some dinners, some betrayals, some moments that seem small to others, change everything. And the moment that leather folder hit the table, I stopped being her boyfriend and started becoming me again.